Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and it's my pleasure to welcome you at Ukrainian Media Center. Today, our second broadcast is dedicated to a very important topic. We will be talking about Russia's information warfare against the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Chechen Republic of Ichkeria has been studying the enemy's influence on information resources, both inside Ichkeria and outside. So today, our speakers will share that experience, we will analyze it, and we will discuss this kind of influence. So let me introduce our guests. Joining us online is Akhmed Zakayev, Prime Minister of the Government-in-Exile of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Also joining us is Rodion Krasnovyd, Public Relations Service, Ministry of Defense, Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Olena Sydorenko, Honorary Consul of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in Ukraine. Also joining us is Mamut, General Representative of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in Ukraine. And joining us online will be Kurochkina, Special Representative of the Prime Minister of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria for special assignments. I want to thank everybody who joins us today. Obviously, we understand that Russian Federation starts any war with information warfare. We've seen it many times. This topic was already studied, researched. Obviously, they support their physical warfare with information impact. So today we will discuss the experience of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. And Mr. Akhmed, the floor is yours. Can you please share your experience? Can you please tell us what are the challenges that you're seeing today, that you're observing, and what should we as Ukrainian media, Ukrainian people know, as well as foreign media? Thank you. Sir, we're not hearing you. Thank you for this opportunity that you've provided us today to talk about the consequences of the war that Russia is waging against us, that Russia has been waging against us within the last 30 years. You know, on December 11th this year marks the 30th anniversary and within those 30 years, we have gained significant experience. We were facing not only the aggressive war, aggressive policies, but also we were facing a monstrous anti-Chechen propaganda that Russian propagandists were spilling all over the place. And today we're seeing that all those who were claiming the Chechen people, who were trying to justify that brutal, horrific war, the genocide of Chechen people, in their majority, those very same journalists have moved to the platforms, information platforms of Ukraine, and they pretend to support Ukraine and Ukrainian people in their war, but at the same time they continue their propaganda against Chechen people, and none of the journalists who address the public from the public platforms of Ukraine never duly, legally and politically and morally evaluate all those events that were unfolding in Chechen Republic. Can you imagine a nation of 6 million people who lost 30% of their population as a result of that aggressive war? 300,000 civilians, among which more than 40,000 were children aged 1 to 12 years. And nobody wants to be held accountable. Nobody wants to recognize that it was a huge crime, that it was a mistake, that it was all wrong, that it was just the beginning of the story unfolding today in Ukraine. And Russia has become the monster they are now because they were enjoying the support, the help of those same journalists who were covering those events, who were trying to persuade international community and Russian community. They were the leaders of the anti-Chechen hysteria that resulted in genocide of Chechen people. Today, the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria is under Russian occupation. However, today we're facing a second phase of demonization of Chechens. I would like you to understand. I don't idealize Chechens, the Chechen people, but I categorically oppose the demonization of Chechen people. I agree, I know that among Chechens, just like among other peoples, there are scum, there are criminals, but it doesn't give the international community or Russians or the world any right to claim the Chechen people. We're a regular nation, we're a regular people. We are not the chosen ones. We don't claim to be the chosen ones because the chosen nature means some shortcomings. We never claim to be the chosen ones. And for us, it's sad and it's painful to watch yesterday's propagandists of Russo-Chechen war today changed, and now they have taken the pro-Ukrainian position, but none of them wants to realize what used to happen before. Nobody even wants to mention those tragic events. And they don't want to give an assessment of what's going on in Chechen Republic now. How come Kadyrov has emerged? What kind of phenomena is this? What are the Kadyrov troops? It's not a Chechen phenomena, it's a Russian world. This is what the Russians managed to make within the last 30 years, after the wars, after the occupation of our country. They managed to establish this image, and today the journalists who were covering those events all those years, instead of providing an assessment of Kadyrov's statement, they just call it a Chechen phenomena. They call those people Chechens. They call it Chechen propaganda or Chechen aggression against Ukraine. But that's not so. Starting from the year 2014, the Chechens, shoulder to shoulder, repelled the Russians' attacks. And those represented by Kadyrov today, or those who represent Putin, are the same kind of collaborationists that exist in Ukraine, in temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine. And obviously, in order to explain it all, to give the right assessment to all those phenomena, is the direct responsibility of the journalists who fail to fulfill their job. That's why we think that providing information platforms for Russian journalists, Russian bloggers who are being used today, those who are currently in Ukrainian information space, we should have every Ukrainian journalist ask them direct questions to identify their position in relation to those past wars in Chechen Republic, because the war in Chechen Republic was a predecessor, it was a preparation of that large-scale aggression against Ukraine. And those sacrifices made by Ukraine, they're all the result of failure to stop Russia back in Chechnya 30 years ago. And it's mostly the responsibility of those journalists, those propagandists who were covering that war, but never communicated the truth. They never ever told the truth. We were a sovereign independent state that, in compliance with the provisions of international law after the split of the Soviet Union back in the times of USSR, had withdrawn from USSR in compliance with the internal legislation of USSR, and we've reestablished our state. And for 3 years we were existing as a sovereign independent state back then, when Yeltsin, or not Yeltsin, but today's Russia has started the war, and the population of that country, just like today they rejoice in Ukrainian war, they were supporting the Chechen war back then, during their birth of Russian Empire with their population. This is why I want to extend my appreciation of this opportunity for me and for the participants of today's broadcast, who are going to tell you what was going on and what is going on in Chechen Republic. Thank you very much. I'm not going to take any more of your time. Thank you very much once again. Have a great day, and I wish Ukraine and Ukrainian people more resilience, courage. You just have to hold on. Don't just let Putin and Russia leave this manslaughter as winners, so they're preserved as an empire, because preservation of Russian empire is the pledge of the future wars. It won't be a frozen conflict or end of the conflict. It will be a suspended war, postponed war. That's why we all have to stand together and express political will. And that spirit of Ukrainian people, which is being reinforced day by day, so we have to support all those who are currently in the front lines, at the forward edge, those who endure all that Russian pressure. I mean all of the Ukrainian people. And I want to convince Ukrainians and Ukrainian people that Chechens will continue standing shoulder to shoulder with you until very end. Thank you very much for this opportunity for me to express my perspective of this situation. I want to express condolences to the families of the victims of those terrible attacks exercised by Russia. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Mr. Akhmed, thank you very much. I would like to ask one small question right away. We've heard a lot of messages towards journalists and mass media, so I would like to ask whether you were talking about Russian media who left Russian Federation and currently work in countries other than Russia, or are you talking about Chechens media that left, or are you talking about Ukrainian mass media? I'm talking specifically about Russian journalists from Russian media resources who now make communications from the information platforms of Ukraine. I'm talking about TV, about those information resources that work for the all over the world. I'm talking about Russian BBC, the Voice of America, the Radio Freedom, the so-called TV channel Dozhd, the Rain. Ask them about the situation in Chechen Republic. Ask them what was happening 30 years ago. What did the Chechen people endure? How can you call this war? How can you assess this war? And you hear the response that their approach to that war is no different from Putin's approach. Those who are currently involved in anti-Ukrainian war, anti-Ukrainian propaganda. Thank you very much for this remark. It was really important. And now, Rodion, the floor is yours. Let's talk in more detail about the manipulations through alternative representatives of Chechen community, and obviously about the sensitive topic of legitimization of government of the Republic. Good afternoon, dear participants, dear spectators. We would like to read the report about the monitoring of media resources. And first of all, I would like to emphasize that the key message of this report is that the journalists, bloggers, the Ukrainian ones, those who touch upon the Chechen topic, those who interview the prisoners of war or comment events in the territories, the territory of occupied Ichkeria, they should have studied this matter better, because there are some sharp angles, so to say. Not everybody understands that the collaborationists from Ichkeria who collaborate with Russia, they are not Chechens, they are collaborationists. And when in media we use such phrases as the Chechens attack, the Chechens have come to the territory of Ukraine, it sounds conflicting towards those Chechens who are defending Ukraine. And we have reasons to assume that it's happening subconsciously. There is no goal to create any divide, but we would like to emphasize that those topics and those phrases are important to support those Chechens who, shoulder to shoulder, are standing in the front lines with us, because it's painful for them, it's sensitive for them. For example, recalling the events of the explosions in Grozny, us as Ukrainians, as journalists, we rejoice about our success, the success of our armed forces. We rejoice the failures of the enemy, but we just don't know that on the territory of occupied Ichkeria there are people who are being held hostages, and they may become, so to say, the victims of explosions, and they are not the people who are collaborationists, since it's an occupied territory of, say, East Bank of Kherson region. If we know that our military have certain success in the temporarily occupied territories, us as Ukrainians, we don't rejoice in death of all the people, because we don't know for sure. In coordination with my colleagues, I've prepared the report that will help you understand how to better cover the problems of the Chechens, so we continue standing shoulder to shoulder with the courageous people with whom we are having a common goal. Information wars, including misinformation campaigns through media platforms, are becoming an important part of modern strategy in hybrid wars. Russia, which is known for their high-scale information activity, actively was using those methods both in international arena and inside the countries that have become the object of their influence. It's visible in the context of preparation of invasion of Ukraine and attempts to control narratives both in international and local scenes. Russian special services such as FSB or ChRI were using their networks for work with political, media, and public figures in Ukraine, as well as Russian-speaking information space. All those efforts were aimed at promotion of Kremlin narratives such as denazifying Ukraine, which contemplated eradication of Ukrainian national identity and change of or replacement of Ukrainian language with Russian one as a tool of political pressure. The Russia's narratives are a preparation for information operations, psychological operations. Before invading Ukraine, Russia allocated a lot of funds to bribe bloggers, public opinion leaders, politicians, and journalists. Those efforts were aimed at a number of goals. First of all, is to create support of Russian interests inside Ukraine, manipulation of public opinion with the use of media persons, the propaganda of narratives about brotherly nations and denazifying. There was a lot of attention paid to the media space where bloggers and journalists were playing an important role in creation of unreal perceptions by the public. The Russian special services started working with the bloggers and journalists long before all that work contemplated both bribe and implementation of Russian ideas disguised as pro-Ukrainian rhetorics. What were the mechanisms that were used? Journalists and bloggers are an important part of information field, specifically during the modern war, when the internet media become the primary source of information for broad public. And they were using different methods such as direct control, which included bribe, blackmailing, threatening to force the public opinion leaders to promote Russian narratives. And another is ideological replacement, where they were using more complex methods of influence. They were promoting Russian ideas under the disguise of pro-Ukrainian ideas. The bloggers might have pretended to support Ukraine, but at the same time they were promoting Russian interests, such as propaganda of bilinguality. Russian-speaking bloggers and journalists have become the key figures in this process because their audience was very sensitive to Russian narratives, and their task was to spread Russian ideas among Ukrainians who support the use of Russian language and those who have cultural ties with Russia. I think that at this moment everybody recalls famous bloggers. I'm not going to call their names. However, everybody may recognize them. The denazifying policy through media space. The special role was allocated to the concept of denazification, which is promoted as justification of Russian invasion of Ukraine. This idea included the following things: propaganda of myth about Nazi threat in Ukraine, accusations of Ukrainian authorities in oppression of Russian-speaking population, and calls to return of Russian language as the main language of communication in Ukraine that could assist the weakening or support the weakening of resistance to Russian oppression. The journalists were meant to become the leaders of those ideas, focusing on Russian-speaking population of Ukraine. Some Ukrainian-speaking journalists also ended up in the crosshair of Russian special services because they could be used to promote the idea of weakening of language laws and bringing back Russian speaking into everyday use. What are the successes and shortcomings in the fight against Russian propaganda? Within the last 2.5 years, Ukraine has been actively fighting Russian agents among their special services and the military. However, among the third important groups, such as journalists and bloggers, there were no purges observed. It can be related with the fact that the media personalities act in a more clandestine ways, and in legal dimension it's more difficult to prove their ties with the Russian special services. And despite any successful attempts of uncovering Russian agents among the government, military, and special and law enforcement, the media space continues to be under intense influence of Russian propaganda. The majority of Russian-speaking journalists and bloggers, while supporting the fight of Ukrainian people for independence, can surreptitiously promote the Russian narratives. That's extremely dangerous because those personalities enjoy high level of trust among their audience, and the analysis demonstrates that the Russian special services actively were using media personalities as an important tool of hybrid war against Ukraine. All those activities included preparation of psyops aimed at undermining national identity of Ukraine and implementation of Russian narratives. It's important to understand, important to recognize that the fight with Russian narratives in the media space requires decisive activities, just like in the physical warfare, in the military warfare, because the information warfare play an important role in legitimization of occupation and justification of Russian invasion. I would like to emphasize, I'm not gonna read the names of the media, of the bloggers. I will just generally express my ideas about the situation that I'm observing. Very frequently, media or bloggers invite the representatives of Chechen diaspora to comment some events in occupied Ichkeria or in occupied parts of Ukraine without verifying to what extent those people represent the people of Ukraine. Aren't they the clandestine agents of ChRI or FSB? For us, the public declaration of support of Ukraine and condemnation of Russian aggression is the only method to discern the pro-Ukrainian journalists from pro-Russian. However, we're observing that there are representatives of, so to say, occupational authorities who position themselves as liberals or opposition or anti-Putin or anti-Kadyrov. However, in reality, they promote pro-Russian occupation narratives. That's a complex thing. We don't want to say that the journalists are doing it wrong or they're doing it on purpose. We invite everybody to research this issue in detail, to study the stories of those people and to address the questions of covering the situation in Chechen Republic with the competent Chechen representatives. So you address them for comments to verify whether those people are really the representatives of Chechen people or they are disguised representative of special services of Russia. Thank you, Rodion. You've said that it's easy to verify, asking the question about the war in Ukraine and other such questions that Ukrainian journalists may use, asking the representatives of Chechen people to verify whether they are influenced by Russian special services, to verify whether the speaker is a Kremlin agent or is still a person who supports Chechen people. Well, first of all, that's a question about recognition of the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in immigration, whether those people recognize the government in exile, because after occupation of Ichkeria, the military units, the leaders of political opinions, the ministers, they've left, not altogether, but part of them, and they continue representing Chechen community in international arena. And this question is the main question, whether a representative of Chechen people who position themselves as Chechen representatives, whether they recognize the government of Ichkeria in exile. If they say, well, it's ambiguous, and they try to explain something, they try to promote the narrative of prevention of legitimization of Ichkerian independence. That's an imperialistic view of occupation of Ichkeria. Thank you very much, Ms. Olena. The floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to say that we need to discern. I really make a division between Kadyrov troops and Chechen people who have been living in occupation for 30 years. We are compassionate to Ukrainians who are currently living under occupation, and usually we're not thinking that the Chechens endure the same. If they express their identity, they are being subject to the same type of tortures as Ukrainians under occupation. I think we should all understand it, and we should make a clear division between those people and the Kadyrov troops. Currently, in Ukraine, as a part of Ukrainian armed forces, and in the armed forces of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, there are 4 battalions of the armed forces of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, and in total there are 6 Chechen battalions currently fighting in the front lines shoulder to shoulder with the armed forces of Ukraine. They're protecting Ukraine against our common enemy, because they all clearly understand, should Ukraine win, the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria automatically becomes independent, really independent, and it will be the first republic of Russian Empire to become free. And its people will stop living under occupation. They will become absolutely free. I would like to emphasize that the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in exile is doing everything. They take all possible efforts. Russian-speaking media space of Ukraine is a field of intersection of different narratives and political interests, including those related to Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and its government. During the war of Russia against Ukraine, the topic of Chechen Republic of Ukraine gains more importance because the Chechens are taking part in the warfare on the side of Ukraine, and it plays an important role in anti-Russian discourse. However, in Ukrainian information space, specifically among the Russian-speaking bloggers and media resources, there are different approaches observed to interaction with representatives of Ichkeria and its people. I'm asking our technical team to put the presentation on the screen. Media, the Russian-speaking media and blogosphere of Ukraine divided their opinion in 2 camps. First camp includes the resources which recognize the legitimacy of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and invite its representatives to take part in discussions and interviews on regular basis. Frequently, such resources address the Prime Minister of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, Mr. Akhmed Zakayev, whom we had an honor to hear at the beginning of our broadcast, who is one of the most prominent personalities of Chechen movement for independence and opposition to the regimes of Putin and Kadyrov. Those media try to demonstrate the fight of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria against Russian imperialism, which is closely intertwined with Ukrainian fight or independence. And another camp is bloggers and journalists who, despite their pro-Ukrainian positions in critique of Putin's regime, they avoid cooperation with the representatives of the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. All those bloggers and media personalities invite different Chechen public opinion leaders, former deputies, to personal enemies of Kadyrov, but not the representatives of the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, which poses questions to such behavior, specifically when it comes to their critique of Russian authorities and the fear to jeopardize their relations with FSB may be one of the reasons. The attempts to clarify those reasons in Ukraine led to ambiguous conclusions. Many of the bloggers were explaining their position by fear of possible consequences on part of Russian special services, specifically FSB. This argument may seem surprising first, specifically now that a lot of bloggers are being criticized by Russian government and were convicted in Russia. Many of them were convicted in absentia for different sentences, which makes their condition irrevocable in Russia, but it seems like they have nothing to lose, and they still explain it by the journalists, they still explain it with their fear of FSB, but probably the real reason is their clandestine loyalty to Russian special services, who, despite the journalist critic of Kremlin regime, continue exercising pressure of them. Their failure to invite the representatives of the government of Ichkeria may mean that those personalities are still under influence of Moscow manipulators who install serious limitations for covering of Ichkeria topics. And talking about manipulation through alternative representatives and legitimization of government of the Republic of Ichkeria. The topic of legitimization of the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria continues being very sensitive for Russian special services, who continue working actively on its oppression. The threat of legitimization is seen as a serious threat to Kremlin because it's posing, or it's putting under dispute the idea of rebirth of this region. And in this context, the special services use a broad range of tools to control Chechen public sentiment, supporting alternative leaders and representatives who formally criticize Kadyrov and Putin, don't emphasize the issue of sovereignty of Ichkeria Republic. Russian special services aspiring to neutralize the real Chechen government use the public opinion leaders to justify their opinions. Those opinion leaders frequently criticize Kadyrov and condemn the activities of Kremlin, trying to pose as the opposition opinion leaders, but their task is to concentrate the attention of audience on internal conflicts without touching upon the issues of reestablishment of independence of Ichkeria. Important role in this strategy is played by media resources under the control of special services, and those alternative representatives are not only being complemented by those who support Russian position, but also those who support pro-Ukrainian position, which demonstrates how multi-layered the manipulation may be when opposition resources in fact promote the Kremlin narratives. Russian special services and media under their control. So Russian services have a broad range of capabilities of information influence, actively use their channels to promote Chechen leaders who don't support the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria through social networks, blogs, and websites. Such figures are posing as independent critics of Kadyrov, which creates an impression of pluralism of thoughts, but there is a goal, a hidden goal behind this pluralism, to obscure the idea of independent Ichkeria and to pose independence of Ichkeria as an internal problem of Russia. Such actors are being usually promoted through the platforms that are being associated with Russian opposition or independent journalism. Moreover, some resources in Ukrainian information space can also pick up such narratives without clearly realizing that thus they play in favor of Russian special services. As a result, there is wrong impression in the media space that the Chechen resistance is only limited to critics of Kadyrov, and there is no idea of reestablishment of Chechen sovereignty and independence. Chechen bloggers and their role in oppression of idea of independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Today we're seeing a lot of fruits of this politics. Chechen bloggers and actors living in exile and criticizing Putin and Kadyrov act against the government of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, and they promote the narrative of FSB about the absence of government institutes of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Meanwhile, criticizing and opposing Kadyrov, this opinion doesn't threat the idea of Moscow. Those bloggers are becoming the instrument of Moscow, diluting the idea of independence and sovereignty of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, inviting former Chechen deputies of enemies of Kadyrov, personal enemies. They still play in favor of Russian Federation because their critics is focused on secondary matters, avoiding primary topics such as reestablishment of Chechnya independence, legitimization of alternative government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Well, everything's lost here. It's all gone. So remains one of the most dangerous topics for Russian government and their special services. In order to prevent the development of this topic, the Kremlin builds complex networks of information influence, promoting alternative leaders in Chechen society. Those leaders, despite criticizing Kadyrov and Putin, are not of threat to Russian control of Chechen Republic. The special services actively use both Russian and Ukrainian media resources to formulate the necessary narratives and to suppress the idea of independence of Ichkeria. Tactical coincidence and strategic difference of goals. First, it may seem that Chechen resistance and FSB have common interests to remove Kadyrov. However, in a tactical sense, it's really so. Meanwhile, in strategic dimension, their goals are different. FSB, through bloggers and journalists under their control, doesn't aspire to remove Kadyrov so much in order to re-establish the freedom in Chechen Republic, but rather to take control over the political government of Chechen Republic. For them, the withdrawal of Kadyrov doesn't mean the regime in Chechen Republic, but the political changes in Kremlin. His removal may result in inevitable conflict between the Kremlin clans for power, which will open new opportunities for fight for Chechen independence. In his turn, Putin tries to preserve the political balance that he was building within the last 25 years. In this balance, Kadyrov plays a key role as a counterbalance to FSB, to whom Putin is not ready to trust the whole power in Russia. That's one of the methods Putin is using to continue controlling the situation in Russia. Thus, despite temporarily tactical coincidences, the interests of Chechen resistance and FSB are absolutely different. FSB aspires to strengthen their control over Chechen Republic and to remove Kadyrov for the sake of full consolidation of power inside Russia. Meanwhile, for the Chechen opposition movement, removal of Kadyrov is the weakening of Russian control, and it's something that opens new opportunities for freedom of Chechnya. Putin continues maintaining this complex balance, and removal of Kadyrov may destabilize both Chechnya and Kremlin itself. The policies of Chechen and Russian opposition journalists. In the context of occupation of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, Russian and Chechen opposition journalists and bloggers who criticize Ramzan Kadyrov for violation of human rights, corruption, and abuse of power frequently address those accusations directly to Kremlin. However, this strategy doesn't only undermine the Kadyrov's power, but also let's implement two key tasks set by FSB. First, critique of Kadyrov and its regime is represented in those in Russian legal space, boiling down to the problem of corrupt Russian region and Russian legal system. It moves the issue of the fight of Chechen Republic for independence to a second plan, and it has a specific goal to prepare the ground for removal of Kadyrov, because Kadyrov opposes FSB. FSB wants to weaken his position and to have him replaced with a figure under stronger control of FSB. The task of Russian special forces is to prevent the legitimization of the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in exile. The prevention of such legitimization in public and media space is one of the key tasks of Russian special forces. For Kremlin, the matter of legitimacy of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria is a serious matter because it's a symbol of opposition to Russian imperialism, and any attempts to legitimize it are perceived in Moscow as a serious threat. And it's demonstrated through oppression of Russian-speaking bloggers who work under certain restrictions of FSB. They are ready to criticize Putin and Russian authorities, but they are not ready to violate the taboo of legitimization of the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Thus, we may say that the failure to work or recognize the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria may be a hidden way of control by the Russian FSB. Thank you very much, Ms. Ina. I hope you're still hearing us, and we're having a question to you. For what we understand, the matter of Chechen resistance is like a red rag for Kremlin, for the aggressor. To what extent are you observing the information influence on this topic? Can you share this with us? Thank you. Good afternoon, dear friends. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.
I will speak English because I would like our Western allies understand me well. So I'm Ukrainian, born in Georgia, and I'm representative of Prime Minister of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, Akhmed Zakayev, and why I do support Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. I will start from bullet points. And first of all, let me remind you that these days are days of remembering of Holodomor. And our family lost in this Holodomor 10 people and actually survived in Georgia. So later, my father was born in Tbilisi and I was born in Tbilisi too. And shortly, I would like to tell that the monster created this Holodomor is the same we face now. It's NKVD, KGB, FSB, all these secret services of Russian Empire. And we should understand that we cannot fight the glove on the hand of this monster. We cannot fight only Putin. We have to fight monster. And the bad thing that some symptoms, some signs of this monster are hidden For example, in 2014, it was obvious that Kremlin, Putin are against Ukrainian people, and it was rhetoric that Ukrainians are fascist and Nazi and so on. And it remains until now. Official Kremlin remain these narratives, but as soon as the full-scale war against Ukraine was started, immediately parallel was a huge special, it was special operation of Russian Kremlin special services because we faced all this movement, relocation of so-called liberal media to Europe. And all this infiltration of Russian agents to, for example, Ukrainian media space, it was obvious for us because we used to see the signs in advance of full-scale war against Ukraine. And what are the signs of this infiltration of agents? So first of all, this so-called Russian media, famous journalist, and I will tell you that I was trust this media, for example, Echo Moskvy, Russian services of Radio Liberty, I was trusted as well. And that's why I didn't know anything about independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, which I understood much later, because I will tell you that Professor Landsbergis, Vytautas Landsbergis, was opened my eyes on this issue. Although I'm from Georgia, although I went through war in Georgia during 1990s, I mean occupation of Abkhazia, can you imagine? And even me, I didn't understand nothing about independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria because all these Russian so-called liberal media journalists were hiding this information. And what are the main signs of this special operation? These journalists are telling that Putin is enemy. And we are, of course, allies with you, Ukrainians. This is main narratives. And Russia could be democratized. And they are hiding crimes of Russian Federation from 1991. And there are a lot of crimes. They are hiding coup against Georgia in 1999, 1991, when Russia was behind this coup. They hiding what was the crime of, for example, Constitution of Russian Federation 1993, when Chechen Republic of Ichkeria was forced, they just included from their side, Chechen Republic, inside Russian Constitution. And next year, they proclaimed the war against like a constitutional order against Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, independent state. They are hiding all the information about independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, how it went from USSR. And they are telling the narrative that Chechen Republic was always part of Russian Federation. This is absolutely fake information. And then appeared such narratives that Kadyrov is the main monster, that Chechens are coming with the Russian army to kill Ukrainians. There are very special narratives from so-called friends of Ukraine that, you know, Chechens, they are not the same as Dudayev time. They they accept they are slaves of Russia. And we know the person who is spreading such narrative. And of course, this is very important to emphasize that so-called bloggers of Ichkeria, they pretend they fight for independence, they pretend they fight against Kadyrov and Putin, but they discreditate the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in exile, and they discreditate personal Akhmed Zakayev. And talking about this particular thing, I will tell you that we went through all this way to understand the tricky way of these people. I will tell you how. As I told you, I was filming in Vilnius. Professor Vytautas Landsbergis for our documentary about start of World War II. And during his explanation about Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, suddenly he stopped and asked me, what do I know personally about independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and the war? And I start to remember some facts, and I did create only narratives of these Russian liberals that, oh yeah, Chechens are maybe terrorists, and Chechnya is part of Russia. It was some terrible war, but no more details. And he started to explain me everything. And from this particular date, it was in 2018, we start to find Ichkerians in exile and make interview with them. So one day, one so-called Ichkerian blogger contact us and ask why I'm so not precise in the facts. So immediately we ask him for the interview, and we were shocked of what he told about independence and about war. So we start to cooperate with him. And as soon as we decide to make a documentary about independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, because it was crucial, it was extremely important to tell the truth about all these steps of independence and how war against Chechen Republic of Ichkeria was started in 1994. And we decide to invite Akhmed Zakayev as Prime Minister of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in exile to speak in this documentary. And immediately this Ichkerian blogger start to, jeopardize me, start to tell me, no, you should not approach Akhmed Zakayev. It's very dangerous. So it was a campaign of discreditation of Akhmed Zakayev, and I understood immediately the sign and the way, because the same thing was done against my first president, Zviad Gamsahurdia. When he was discredited, he was stigmatized by these Russian liberals, even not now, but it was started in 1990. It was huge campaign against him. And the same way, so-called Georgian liberals, fighters for independence of Georgia. It was during Soviet time, before crash of USSR. These agents came to Europe, to Václav Havel, to Adam Michnik, to different countries, explaining that Zviad Gamsahurdia is Nazi, fascist, and so on, dictator. So later, when it was coup against him, when we voted as a first president of Georgia, it was a coup against him. And from this time, it was a legalized narrative that it was a civil war in Georgia. Can you imagine? Ukrainians know very well what means this, narrative about civil war in Ukraine. So it was absolutely the same. So as soon as I understand this topic and this signs of discreditation of government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, it was so important, it was so dangerous that immediately I contacted Akhmed Zakayev, and we met first time actually in Brussels during first days of full-scale war against Ukraine. It was 25th of February 2022 when Akhmed Zakayev proclaimed this initiative about creation of foreign legion in the ZSU. So from that time we worked together, and even we completed this documentary about details of independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. We suggested this documentary to Russian service of Radio Liberty to open eyes of whole society that this is parallel between Russia attacks Ukraine and used to be how Russia attacked Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. It was absolutely the same way, and it was so necessary to open eyes to society. And very, very, sign of obstruction of this truth was that Andrei ChRI, the director of Russian service of Radio Liberty, refused to start this discussion. So later we understood that this is the whole position of Russian liberals, and they are all in the shoes that Russia should be democratized, and they are hiding the crimes of Russian Federation from 1991 until full-scale war against Ukraine started. All these crimes are hidden, and they pretend they are good Russian, and they continuing their life. So we can see the huge system of discreditation of independence of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, and itself the government of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, which is the main institute of state. And we thank Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine for recognition of territory of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria is occupied by Russian. Thank you very much for attention.
Дякую, пані Інно, дякую вам.
Thank you very much, Ms. Inna. Thank you, dear colleagues. If you have any questions or reflections, we are ready to pass the microphone to the floor. So let us know, please. I would like to invite Mr. Adam Mamut, who will also say a couple of words in English. Mr. Adam, please. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
I'd like to add some points what my colleagues already said. And today I want to talk about how Russian intelligence uses the media of its opponents to spread propaganda, whether this happens on purpose or by accident. First, let's look at intentional manipulation. Russian agencies are very skilled at twisting stories in enemy media to create confusion and division. They take real issues and add lies or misleading information to make people trust their government less and fight among themselves. Second, let's talk about accidental help. Sometimes opposing media spreads Russian propaganda without realizing it. This happens when journalists or media workers rush to publish a story without checking the facts, or when they repeat what unreliable sources says. And by doing this, they unintentionally help Russia spread its message. Russia also uses a strategy called reflexive control, where they feed information designed to trigger predictable reactions. In this way, they manipulate media workers into unknowingly promoting Kremlin propaganda. To fight back, the media must fact-check carefully, avoid emotional traps, and stay independent. Educating media workers about these tactics is essential to stop them from being used as tools in information warfare. By recognizing these strategies, we can protect the truth and resist manipulation. And I would like to add more. I'd like to ask media workers, especially in Ukraine, don't name the Chechens who are members of Russian forces or a Russian government. Stop to name them Chechens. Real Chechens are fighting on the ground of Ukraine under independence flag of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. So real Chechens are here on the ground of Ukraine. And please stop naming some people of our nation who are part of Russian forces or Russian government. Just call them Russian forces or Russian government or Russian officials. Thank you very much for attention and giving us an opportunity to point out of our view. And Ukraine will be free because 30 years ago our first president, Zakayev, claimed that the sun of freedom will rise in Ukraine. So we are waiting for this sunrise, and we are sure that this will happen in the near future. Thank you very much.
Дякую, Адам, дякую за ці слова. У нас
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Thank you for your kind words. We're having a question.
What you were just saying, how people label, especially because we have defenders here with the Legion, Sheikh Mansour, etc. battalion. There are a few security analysts in Europe who have tried to write the idea that Ukraine will be a conduit for Islamic terrorism, which I immediately rejected. But I think the world needs to hear some answer to this suggestion, because that was the battalions that they were trying to name. And that's my area of expertise, so I fought back. But I'd rather hear it from you guys, because it's your specialty. And especially how dangerous that is, both to the battle here and also ultimately to the fate of Chechens. Дякую.
хто візьме?
Thank you for the question. And first of all, I want to specify that a lot of Chechens who are fighting in Ukraine against Russian invasion, they still have relatives and families on occupied territory of Ichkeria. And it's rather complicated to be open to media, to be open to society with specifying their names, their faces, and most of Chechens who are fighting, they are trying to hide their faces, or they changes the name. And imagine how it is to fight in battalion, understanding that if you will be recognized as a fighter against Russia, you will be your family or your relatives or friends even would be tortured on occupied territory of Ichkeria. So it's not easy to declare that we are fighting all together. And now look how much battalion is, how much our forces are, where we are, and please come and show our fighting. It's complicated. We receive a lot of messages from occupied Ichkeria that families are now under big pressure. So if a year ago it was only political, moral pressure, it was pointed arrests. But now Russian administration, by hands of Kadyrov, start mobilize young Chechen guys, leave the families without men to keep them under the pressure. And yes, here there are a lot of battalions. Some of them are not named, and for us rather complicated to speak openly about the decisions on combat field and who does this, because like mirror, we receive the messages from occupied territory that someone is tortured. The same how it was on occupied territory of Ukraine, when the relatives and families of those who joined armed forces of Ukraine immediately was started to be tortured or put it in prison. So here we not all the government in exile, because a lot of us are divided by families and they have not opportunity to leave occupied territory for many reasons. I cannot specify it in media, but the problem is also one is the idea is that for the future, on our point of view, to organize good, well-organized relocation of people, of campaign defending human rights of Chechens. We want to declare among different states and embassies that it's not only the problem of some people, it's not some people, it's problem of humanity, and this problem has its name and its facts. We can work together on it, and those independent, free and amazing nation started to defend themselves in the 80s. So they don't ask to defend them with guns, just support with legal options for now. If I answered your question.
Well, my concern is that because part of it is designed to impugn the reputation of Ukraine, you know, Russia is pushing this idea that there's already a problem here. But there are analysts, some convenient security analysts in Europe, who have tried to impugn the reputation of Chechens as extremists, you know, and that therefore they shouldn't be trusted. And I found that to be, as someone who knows how the battalions have worked here, like very dangerous for the ultimate outcome of Ukraine, plus the fighters here. So it's that labeling, especially the concern in Europe of ISIS infiltration, Tajiks, etc., using that to impugn this particular battalion or these battalions was not pushed back enough in European press. It was sort of okay, you know, and I think that that's where information warfare really grows, is that the press in Europe is not sophisticated enough or informed enough to really say, oh, that's impossible, there's observation or something to that effect. That's part of my concern. Дякую.
We absolutely agree that if we can obtain and push to the media the topic of independence of Ichkeria by facing the people, it would work better for defending the human rights of Chechens in Europe. But at the same time, it's rather complicated to face all of them. We can just organize like this event or show some faces who are open, who don't have families on occupied territory. And for now, we still have a huge problem that some Chechens are arrested. And it's a huge campaign to move them to Russia, because Russia, by Interpol, sent a request to move those people because they have some illegal problems. And we see that society understands the issue is, but they still move them to Russia. And the second topic we plan to obtain and sought in future to organize a better way of supporting those who want to move. Answering your question, a lot of people who still have option to leave Ichkeria, occupied part of Ichkeria, they are thinking how it could be in Europe or, for example, in other state if we could be arrested, even if Europe. Russia just sent a request that its guy or its girl, that girl is among a terrorist group. Please send them back. And we don't know how it will work. For now, it's 50-50, but still the risk is high because every life is important. We cannot say that how the risk is in a persons, because the risk is, and it's a risk about life. Thank you.
Дякую вам, дякую за цю.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this conversation. We have to finalize our meeting. We want to thank everybody who is joining us. I hope that it was important and interesting for all of our journalists, for media, for further coverage, and to make sure that we can correct our mistakes, that we can recognize our mistakes and work on them. Thank you very much for this important conversation. And of course, I want to thank our security and defense forces, thanks to whom we can gather here for discussions like this. And let's continue working together for our victory, and glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.